when there's no thinking of what one is going to hear or going to say, and there's just listening. Listening without the words of what it is, about what it is that it is heard, just the listening. It's clearly different from listening with some kind of focus to what one is saying or hearing. And yet the mind does not close up. Even though a focus of talking, listening, looking can be there. And yet if we were right now in a state of mutual tension, irritation, angry at each other, and telling each other, giving each other peace of one's mind, as we say, there may be no awareness of the sound of the trees. So when the thoughts that are being expressed and that come out so automatically most of the time, when they come out of this whole structure of the self with its deep emotional, physical accompaniment, subtle and deep, superficial and deep, when that self-center is the main focus of the moment, then the thoughts, there's no attention, there's no awareness. The thoughts run mechanically, automatically, within a certain pattern set in the past. It may change a little bit in the present, but it's a combination of past and present patterns. And not this openness of awareness. Then maybe there comes a moment where there's a waking up to what is going on. If it's truly a moment of awareness, not just thinking, changing, shifting from the train of thought that one is caught up to another train of thought, maybe that one shouldn't be caught up in anger. When there's truly a moment of pausing, stopping, listening, then all the thoughts that have just gone through the mind or been expressed and heard is a memory that is visible or palpable. One can look at it. What just happened? It's a memory now, but it's available, it's there. Just as if we talk right now and mention the pond up there with the two white rings and the reflection of the clouds in the water, the slight ripples from the wind. We're not there, but the memory is look-atable. We can see it. And yet the mind remains open. With this thought of the pond, and then, let's say it was 98 degrees in here, which we've had, and the thought of the pond brings up this tremendous desire to listen to the cat. Then the mind and body may be completely taken over with imagining dunking down into that pond and cooling off. And that thought with the sensations, one can almost sense the pleasure of the cold water. Then the mind narrows down to a very small stage. And the pleasurable feelings and emotion, all of that makes for this enclosed space, particularly if it's connected with the desire to do that. Desire to get there, to have that pleasure. Often in a retreat, when there's more attention, it isn't just a flickering here or there. It seems to have some stability. It appears as though thoughts are just coming and going, and it doesn't matter very much. It doesn't seem to break down this state of being aware. Then again, these thoughts may not be of the deeply self-centered quality. Or if a self-centered thought arises, an image of oneself, it can be seen very quickly and die, go. So the whole emotion isn't set into motion about how good I am, how poor I am, well, we know all of these thoughts that dart through the mind, and either they catch on fire, and then the awareness is gone, or they're instantly seen and the wind is not gone. But as this darting in and out of images and thoughts happens, it may just be that this is an alternation between thinking and awareness. But the rapidity with which it happens gives the feeling that thinking and awareness are simultaneous. That is, if that interests one, it's for each one to examine that. Maybe it is not examinable, just like some optical illusions of movement, where it's really in truth a quick succession of separate points lighting up, feeling as a light is moving, but it's actually two separate lights alternatingly coming off and on. The brain is not capable of resolving that when it's fast enough into two separate moments. It gives an illusion of movement. Talking some more about thoughts. The person who we brought it up yesterday, we took a walk, and on this beautiful day that we've been having, just one beautiful day after another, the crispness of the air, the sparkling sunshine and the coolness. Remember we were talking about it, then the sudden emergence of a thought of how human beings all over the world are living in such sorrow, pain, misery, conflict, and how it hit, how the body responded with the pain. It didn't label it that way. And again, in another meeting, this person told me, taking another walk the next day, he was experimenting with this. It was the same joy of walking and the brilliancy of the day, and then deliberately evoking a thought about the misery of the world, and that feeling wasn't there. And we wondered about that. What is it about some of our thoughts, thinking? We'll remain with this example because it is very, very important. the thought about what goes on throughout the world. And this one thing I think I mentioned it in one of the talks, this African country where two tribes are in collision, one tribe murdering thousands of the other tribe, and these people now fleeing into a neighboring country. And there were on television some incredible pictures, particularly moving of little children on their mother's arm or just walking around, hurt, with these big, deep eyes that seem to never have known a smile. These are facts. We talked about that yesterday. And that these things are going on are facts, even though it is thought that conveys these facts at the moment that we're taking a walk. And why is it that at times the fact can be deeply felt, at other times it cannot be? It remains a superficial thought. And we were wondering whether we don't live most of the time in these superficial thoughts which are sort of disconnected from the actual facts. I think that's true, we do. That's why it's so vital. We mentioned it yesterday or the day before, that when we're together and we're interested in the same thing, namely in finding out about ourselves, about how we live, that we ask each other as we talk, what do we mean by this? What do you mean when you use this word? What does it refer to? So that one pauses and gets off of the automaticness of language and talking and enters deeply into what it is really that one is trying to express. Maybe one hasn't tried to express anything. Maybe it was just superficial and automatic. Or maybe one is trying to express something but is not quite in touch with it. So can we give each other time to look and express and be in touch with the actual facts that the words we're using so facilely are referring to, are expressing? And that doesn't mean when one asks each other this, what do you mean by this, that one is critical or critical of the word somebody uses, but one is interested to go into the depth of it, to be in touch with the real thing, which is a mutual thing. Or can be. The other person may not be into it, may feel, leave me alone, I want to relax. And relaxing, I've looked a lot at it, thought about it, looked at it. Relaxing does mean letting the thoughts run along their well-oiled tracks. And there's no energy which is needed to stop and look. And it's really a using of the mind in a very appropriate way, and in an energizing way, to to look, what is it really that I'm trying to say? So often we say, I just can't find the words, I can't express this. But if one allows time and looking, one may find one hasn't looked at something thoroughly and clearly. It's not that one doesn't have the words to express something, but one hasn't looked, one hasn't seen quite clearly what it is that one wants to say. And if one pauses to look and things clear up, then the words will come to express it. Or they are flexible. The other person may say, look, I still don't understand you, so one leaves those words and looks for some others. But what is to be said, or what is looked at, or to be expressed is clear. It's not just that one can do this with a close friend, but when we talk so much to ourselves about ourselves, this constant monologue, soliloquy going on. And we get very affected by how we talk to ourselves about ourselves. We've talked a lot about this, maybe not so much in the talks, but in meetings. These headlines or punchlines that we create about ourselves, and that we then smart from or feel good about. And we're questioning this whole process of making statements about oneself and the effect that they create in us emotionally. And again, can one, once the statement has been made, it has been expressed, can one check back, what does it refer to? Go back to the facts. And one will usually find that this statement is not just accurately expressing facts, but one calls oneself names, or makes a very broad generalization about oneself, and then one feels sorry for oneself because of what one has said about oneself, what is happening, what one has to suffer, and so forth. And then to be alert to this process taking place and checking back, what is it really that I'm basing this statement on, and remain with those facts. It may not give one the pleasure of self-pity, but it also doesn't have the lows and this weaving around of emotions that we go through because of how we think about ourselves. It's amazing when one catches it very quickly, to realize one doesn't have to do that at all. The statement can break off before it is completed, as it comes up, if one sees what one is about, or what the brain is about to engage in, and remaining with the actual situation. Then there is a lightness, a different kind of energy, which doesn't depend on the words we say. One question we didn't get to yesterday was, what does it mean when we say, I'm confused? I'm so confused. As again, as a statement, what does it refer to? Usually we remain with a statement, which implies, since I'm confused, I can't be clear. But is it possible to look at what one calls confusion? What made one say that? What actually happened? Again, this is using the mind. It takes some energy to do this. This is why, as one person put it, it's the most exhausting work I've ever done. But it's not only exhausting, it also creates energy. That's the amazing thing about it. So, when do we feel that we are confused? Is it that we notice something is happening, but we think it shouldn't be happening? We're convinced it shouldn't be happening, but it is happening, so I'm confused. Or I say I'm confused, rather than, that's removing oneself, isn't it? Rather than looking, why is one so invested in what should happen, rather than being with what is actually taking place? If one sees these two strands colliding, the actual with the idea, producing this, what one calls confusion, if this is seen, then can one remain with what's actually happening and be with that, and not indulge the thought it should be otherwise? Confusion very often refers to the thought process. One is trying to think through different strands of thought, what different people maybe have said or taught, and it's in contradiction with each other, and then trying to think some more to straighten it out. But confusion cannot be undone by thinking more. It usually adds to it. When one feels totally confused in one's head, what is right, what is wrong, this one said this and this one said that, and a third one has said that, and my own experience is yet something else. Can one again pause and quiet down, understanding that thinking more about it will not clear up the muddy pool. Sometimes a muddy pool has to sit quietly so that one can see for oneself what is actually happening, not what this teacher or that authority or that expert says happens. One has to look, there has to be a new mode of the mind and body coming into being, the mode of looking and verifying directly for oneself, being in touch oneself. And if that's not possible, if it is about something that one cannot be in touch with facts, can one leave it? Not make a problem out of trying to think through something that thought cannot resolve. Let the whole question or problem sit there. without making a further problem out of it. Something is said in a talk, and if the mind merely tries to understand it intellectually, it may go up to a point, because a lot of things are if one thing follows from another, they are logical. And yet there comes a point where one feels lost or confused, because now one has to verify oneself. Because what is talked about is doesn't just make intellectual sense. We have to touch each other in the same space. Which is not verbal. Words may try to express it, but what the words express is not verbal or intellectual. The word, or the most beautiful poetic words that someone may be capable of describing, the sound of the rustling of leaves and branches, is not the direct hearing of it. With which we come to another thing somebody brought up. And it was connected again with a question that was looked at yesterday. Somebody had said, in this work I come to a point where I feel I can't go beyond, I feel stuck. And someone told me, I've noticed that when I look at a tree, I tell myself, I can't see that tree. I really can't see it. It's very similar to what we were saying before, isn't it? Can one drop the statements one makes about oneself and one's processes and look again? Is it blurry? Then that's what it is. Is it fuzzy, interspersed with thoughts? That's what it is at that moment. But why should one believe the statement one makes about oneself that one cannot see that tree? With that, the mind encloses itself in judgments of its own capacity or incapacity and the feelings that go with it. And as we said earlier, at that moment, there is no tree and no wind. There's only the concern about oneself. Feeling bad, guilty, deflated, or whatever. Because as we've pointed out so many times, a single thought arouses all kinds of feelings and emotions, which then become so important, so vibrating and enclosing. They seem to take up the whole space. So the thought, I can't see, or I can't be beyond, may be the wall, or the wanting to get beyond, wanting to see that tree, may be the veil. A little child which is not yet conditioned with all these things, it should be doing. It starts early enough. But there are times in the life of a very small child where there's no I should be seeing or so, and therefore the eyes are so open. There's no tension around the eyes. They're just open, they're looking. With what seems to be real wonder often. We were this week in Denver with our grandchildren. In the evening, when it got a little cooler, we took a walk away from the houses. There's a lovely section where the houses end and the desert starts. And there's already, in anticipation for more hundreds of houses, there's a very nice sidewalk that goes up a hill with trees and green strips. And as you get higher above, far above the rooftops of the houses, you see the whole chain of mountains. Since it was evening, it was usually close to sunset. And looking over the desert, you see also the distant mountains. And we were pushing the buggy with our little granddaughter in it. And at times she just shrieked with joy at seeing things. If we did come by a house, she flowers, she says, flowers, she means flowers. Pretty flowers. The voice, the whole range of pitch. And then we came by a part where every flower had dried up. There was nothing colored in there. And she said, where are the flowers? And we did point out the mountains and the sunset, and the next after that didn't have to say it anymore. She had words for it. She had seen it before because she could see from her home the joy that she was taking it all in. There was no thought, I can't see those mountains. Maybe after enough schooling, I think I've mentioned this, it's long ago, maybe not so recently, so I'll mention again. We live across from a school. And actually it's interesting, in contrast to the school that our grandson goes to, where kids twice a day just absolutely explode out of that building onto the playground, where there are marvelous things to climb on, and it's one shriek, a symphony of shrieking. That school, never thought of it. Opposite it has a lot of lawn, but has no things to climb on and balance on and swing around on. And the kids aren't out very much. Must be more studious in that school. More curriculum, maybe. They do better than in their entrance exams for college. So one time, indeed, the kids did burst out of that door, and the teacher after them, of course, first roughing it and tumbling, and then they all had to gather around a little tree that had been planted. It was quite a while ago. It wasn't so big yet. And the kids had to sit down around the tree and make some picture of it, and the teacher explained what each part of the tree was. And the whole enthusiasm of the kids bursting out into the open air from before was gone. And some weren't with it at all. Pulled each other's hair, things like that. Who wants to know the names of the parts of a tree? at such a young level. Earlier, there may have been a real feeling. I remember Ben when he used to pat his hands against the bark. And look at grasses when they were blowing, when he couldn't even walk yet. He was just sat down on the lawn and he watched these grasses on end. So we can't become children again, but can our eyes open up simply without any command or without any statement about what they can or can't see? Just look what's there. And not expect anything from it. Not want to get something out of it. Because then the me is there, and we talked about it earlier, when that me structure is operating, then there's very little vision. But a lot of self-importance, positively or negatively. And it's not a matter of getting rid of this me so I can see clearly, but see clearly all of these me thoughts and statements. Well, we've gone over it. One person was asking, what really is freedom? It came in connection with a talk early in this retreat when we mentioned all the patriotism in this country and manipulation of voters, and saying that this is happening in a free, in quotation marks, country. The question came up then, but what really is freedom? Because obviously there are some so-called freedoms in this country which are not available in other countries, in Russia or China, Romania. Just heard something the other day about life in Romania. Very saddening. Although it was also mentioned in that meeting that people in that country may feel that they're much freer than the Americans. Free to have housing, no unemployment, no homelessness, and so forth. Can't change your jobs or travel around like you can in this country. Can't certainly go to the shops and just buy whatever suits your fancy and taste. It's unbelievable how you can buy almost anything at any time. Any fruit or vegetable, whether it's the season at the place you buy it or not, it's available someplace in a shop if you're in a city. And you can, at mid-age, change your career. You can drop what you're doing, go to school again, get along, and start a new professional career, which is quite unheard of in most countries. We talked about that the press is free to dig up stories, to say, to write, although we'll go deeper and really go into this thing of freedom. Even as we pick the clothes or the car, appliances or the house that we would like, the job that we would love, how free are we? What motivates us? That has to be looked at. What compels us? What compels our choice? Or influences it? Compelling may be too heavy a word. And what does? Isn't it always what I am used to, what I would like to have for myself, according to what I have learned is pleasing, comfortable? To me. So there is some freedom for the me to try to get what it wants. Only to find very often that when one gets what one has dreamt about so much and now has, the dreams don't stop. The wanting hasn't come to an end. One gets used to what one has and wants more or something different. Discontent and wanting are integral parts of this whole structure of the me. And we talked 3 talks worth of fear. Another integral part of me, this feeling of being a separate entity which has been evolving through our past experiences, indoctrinations, conditionings, trainings, the images we have formed about ourselves. So that is what chooses and picks and feels at that moment free to choose and select and get. And it's the same structure, brain and body, accumulated structure, that keeps feeling discontent and wants more or something else. Is that freedom? The freedom to do what one likes to do according to one's past history. We've talked a lot about the confinement and imprisonment of the images of oneself, positive ones and negative ones. One person mentioned as I get better and more expert at things, there is an increasing dread in my life. And in looking at it, probing into it. The better one is, the more one has to be on guard. And one won't make a mistake, or that the image won't be damaged. Someone else won't be better, the comparisons that we feel compelled to do if we're attached to self-image. And the increasing isolation that potentially or actually happens as one becomes better and better at something. Is that freedom? What is freedom? Is such a thing possible, or is it just an ideal which we mouth and get ourselves all psyched up on? To dream about freedom or to pronounce oneself to be free, part of the free world, the idea and concept is used a lot for that purpose, to give one an emotional boost, the thought of it, that one is free. But what is freedom when it is no concept, no idea? And the question comes up, doesn't it, whether there can be freedom from the enormous, momentous weight and pressure of the past. Which sits here right now and acts and chooses and wants and fears and strives, attains and wants more or wants less. Can there be freedom from that weight? From the weight of having to be somebody or something, or having to become something or somebody, which is a tremendous weight. We don't mean freedom from past conditioning which keeps this organism alive and healthy. We're not even aware what all that historically developed keeps this organism healthy and functioning. We're not even aware of that. We don't. Only if we study it very carefully do we get some idea of the immensity of processes in this organism. But the weight of the past of what I am, psychologically, in relationship, and in my ideas about myself, can that weight drop? Can the ideas about myself be seen for what they are and not get in the way? And the ideas that I have of you be seen for what they are as they come up and not get in the way? So there can be freedom in our relationship with each other. Freedom of looking and listening and relating now, aware of the pressure of the past, and yet not so totally influenced by, pushed around by it. We may not have the answer, but is the question gripping? Seeing the utter importance of this freedom, or else our relationship will continue to be based on the past, what we know about each other favorably and unfavorably. Racially, ideologically, religiously, and the battle continues. On the smallest level and on the largest level, it's the same battle of the past. I think unless there is this freedom of the pressure and weight of the past, there cannot be genuine love in our relationship. But without that love, what are we? We will end here for today.